The recording will miss my very heartfelt introduction, but it will at least capture all the good stuff, which is your presentation. So this is Dr. Jason Cross.
Oh, thank you, Megan. Coming from you, that introduction means a lot. It's great to virtually meet you all and maybe see some of you in Oxford in a month. So let me share screen right here. Oh, I need
Yep, let me do
share.
that.
Okay.
Okay, should be good now.
Okay, let's see. All right, hold on a second.
Is it working?
I think so. Hold on. Oh, permissions management. Hold on. Okay, let me try it. Let me try now. Hold on.
There we go.
All right. You can see that?
Mhm.
Okay, wonderful. All right, I've got a presentation mode. So it's a great delight to be with you all this morning or afternoon, dependent on where in the world you are. And Really excited about this program. Megan's told me a lot about how global the community is, and I think that's really crucial for developing the kind of IT infrastructure that healthcare needs in any one country, but also, we know people and viruses, move across borders all the time. And we learned that with COVID in a very dramatic way. Let me give a brief introduction to myself from a professional perspective. My background is global health innovation, law, policy, and business strategy. Um, and my I used to be a professor actually at Duke University and lead a think tank and venture incubator there. A lot of that work was focused on consulting and partnerships with emerging market ministries of health and big pharma, big device companies, and trying to broker what today we would call value-based procurement deals. We had in the mid 2000s, yet another generation of miracle drugs and miracle point of care diagnostic devices that could save millions and millions of lives pretty immediately, but the typical business model of charging high prices until patents expire, and then eventually 20 years later you start seeing a drop of prices was leaving access out of reach to a lot of the planet. So, the thesis was, all right, how could we get creative on business models uh, and enable health systems to save money from the impact of these treatments and devices, and then pay after the money saved rather than requiring high upfront payments. And those kind of deals, some of them were successful, many weren't because of lack of trust between multiple organizations. And three things: one, lack of trust in the quality of the activities that each organization is supposed to do. And I can do my bit really well, but if others in the value chain don't do theirs well, we don't get the outcomes. And if we don't get the outcomes, the savings don't materialize. So these kind of value-based, outcome-based financing and payment models are dependent on everyone doing what they're supposed to well. And there wasn't a lot of trust in that. Two, no one trusting each other's data about what they're doing. Because frankly, with most database systems, if you persuade the right administrators with the right access to change things, they can, right? So there's a lot of suspicion about cheating with data. And third, no one really trusted anyone else with their own data because there's privacy liability issues, maybe trade secret and other intellectual property concerns, etc. And so it was a trust problem. Meanwhile, in the mid 2010s, we were beginning to see blockchain technology be applied in a variety of large enterprise use cases. And I thought, all right, this is a technology platform that is all about addressing these trust gaps. I need to find the right partners. So I connected with a lot of the leading enterprise blockchain development groups and so forth. And then one day I was at the Medicines for All Institute in Virginia that the Gates Foundation funds to re-engineer chemistries for manufacturing of essential medicines so that generic prices can come down even lower with even lower cost of manufacturing. And I met the guy who would become, Megan mentioned him, David, my co-founder and CEO, and he's our lead technologist at Remedy. At the time, he was CTO of a pharma manufacturer, and he was partnered with the Medicines for All Institute. He was making nevirapine, the HIV antiretroviral API, and he was running the QMS in the laboratory for the making of the API, the quality management system, on his laptop with inline sensors, assuring quality and so forth. And he was already leveraging blockchain technology and how he did that. And I got connected with him, like, hey, you two need to talk blockchain. Jason's got a bunch of crazy global health applications. Turns out Dave's already using it. It's just, not frontline, front page kind of headline news. And the chemistry that would become Remedy was born. And so I'm going to explain in this presentation some foundational principles about blockchain technology, and then a variety of ways in which Remedy uses it and a number of use cases, and in that way share a variety of lessons learned that we've experienced and that we're trying to socialize and disseminate, both to grow confidence in use of this kind of technology, but also help the broader industry, realize some level of comfort. So first off, um, we at Remedy we consider ourselves a cloud platform to improve the patient provider experience across health services. So I mentioned my co-founder, Dave. And one of the things that distinguishes us, I think, from an enterprise technology perspective, is that Dave started out in the life science industry, and then he pivoted for a little over a decade as CIO and CTO in a number of companies in the automotive and logistics industry. Now, this is an industry that's typically kind of low margin, and therefore efficiencies really matter. And in the 90s, with the birth of the large scale commercial internet, we started seeing them leverage software innovation and digital connectivity to achieve three sort of buzzwords. One is to scale the principles of lean manufacturing. Two, to enable just-in-time supply chains. And three, using data to have a data-driven inventory management system. And so we saw that in the retail space. We all experienced the last 30 years of change in terms of what our retail stores have on stock and how quickly they can restock, and with e-commerce, how quickly we can get things. And in the automotive industry, that applied to all components of auto part supply, et cetera. So, ERP software, electronic data interchange, EDI, connectivity standards allowed for an ecosystem of lots of companies at lots of different layers of the value chain who are competing with each other and are also selling and buying from each other uh, to get really digitally connected and achieve massive things for their companies and for their customer base, right? Meanwhile, in healthcare, and especially in life sciences, we didn't see a lot of that. And so David then came back to life sciences as first CIO of a large contract manufacturer in the pharmaceutical industry. And he's used to, the ERP, EDI revolution and logistics and manufacturing. And he walks into a pharma plant and everything's in the Stone Age, right? And here he's CIO, and compliance processes for quality management systems are still heavily reliant on paper and software systems, or there might be 8 or 10 different software systems that people have to enter data into from paper, and sometimes data from one software system gets entered on another piece of paper, and then that gets entered into another, and it's tremendous room for human error, clerical mistakes, and he just saw sort of this you know not just great inefficiencies, but a lot of regulatory challenges in the factory as a result. So he started trying to digitize quality management systems in a factory. And when you try to do that in the early 2010s in the pharmaceutical sector, you had regulatory compliance, sort of compliant with good manufacturing practice standards, software that was maybe 10 years behind the curve in terms of functionality, really not that great. Or you had cutting edge manufacturing quality management system tools that were not compliant with life science standards, particularly FDA GMP standards. So he started kind of designing his own, and that would become the alpha version of the Remedy platform. And he also began seeing the value of blockchain technology protocols. And in short, the quick version of what is blockchain is different blockchain technologies are based on essentially a distributed record. You sometimes hear the term DLT, distributed ledger technologies, that's running across lots of different nodes that are doing the compute for that. And there's a few key principles, one of which is these are append-only ledgers, meaning you can add information, you can't delete it. And that has huge implications. Now, I just want to say, if I add a mistake, the wrong information, then I can always correct it. But then what we end up having after that correction is an immutable record of what was first entered, and then that there was a correction, et cetera. And that has massive implications for quality control and quality management. And so an immutable record in the cloud where you can't cheat, you can't hide information. Dave started leveraging to automate several aspects of sort of change control and quality management systems and so forth, and making the medicines. And that became sort of the kernel of what would become the Remedy platform. So now let me walk you a little bit further down the line. So when Dave and I met, my perspective was like, this is awesome. Like, you're already leveraging, blockchain technology to automate QMS in making medicines. And what does that mean? That means at each stage in manufacturing medicine inside a factory, you got a series of workstations, the way that industrial engineers think about it. And at each step, we need to know what comes in, what goes out, who's running that step, if it's machinery or if it's some kind of activity or transporting something from one room to another, et cetera. Are they certified to do that activity? Are they up to date with their certifications? Have they, if SOPs have been changed, are they up to date with those, et cetera? And traditionally burdensome paper dependent processes for that result in massive filing cabinets and a lot of opportunities for error and for people to cheat. So what Dave designed was a system where, in doing the work, you're generating the data. That data uh, is immediately part of a immutable audit trail. So no one can cheat. And then the software also automate populating the appropriate digital versions of compliance documentation, et cetera, so that if a customer needs to audit or the FDA needs to audit, et cetera, everything's already in the appropriate compliant format. Signatures are meeting what in the pharma industry we call CFR 21 Part 11. It's the US FDA code for managing electronic signatures, electronic information, et cetera. And so, you do that at that workstation, then you got this next workstation and the next workstation and the next workstation. And I said, Dave, this is awesome, but I've got a world of global health use cases where we can apply this to if we take this kind of platform out of the four walls of a factory to the world of increasingly decentralized healthcare, where people might get screened in some mass health screening campaign, or screened as part of regular activity in a nursing station in a public school or primary care clinic or whatever, and then be referred as a result of that screening, which may or may not include a rapid point of care test, et cetera, to some next diagnostic step, a confirmatory PCR test, for example, and then a diagnosis results, and then maybe you have to pick up a medicine or go for some kind of treatment. And not increasingly, these things are happening in different places that may not all be running on digital systems, different places that, if they are all running on digital systems, are very likely to be running on very different systems, not just competing EHRs, for example, but a laboratory is going to be running on a laboratory information system or lab information management system, a clinic potentially on an EHR, if there's clinical research going on, then a clinical trial management system, maybe managing patients and providers, all these different software systems that are not designed to easily talk to each other. And so Dave, can we take this out of the four walls and apply it across increasingly decentralized healthcare? And so we did. We founded Remedy, and we summarized with this slide the pain points for patients and providers that result in significant lost opportunity to generate economic value, whether that results in savings or for companies, growth and higher margins, better reimbursement because you're delivering better value to patients, et cetera. But it comes down to these three C's, as we call them, right? We've got, massive costs due to, difficulties in coordinating across organizations. We have all sorts of coordination challenges related to that. And it makes compliance for these kind of workflows very difficult. All of that makes it really challenging for leaders to deploy truly collaborative solutions across healthcare ecosystems. I like to say, because it's usually when the lawyers, and I'm a lawyer by training, that's when the lawyers come in and say, no, you don't do that. We've got these compliance risks. And so one shortcut for what Remedy is and what Remedy does is I like to say, we get the lawyers out of the way between patients and providers, or patients and researchers. And so how do we do that? I talked a little bit about the advantages from a data integrity perspective of blockchain technology. And the insight is pretty simple. If we can have at a foundational level of the technology, immutable records with cryptographic key management that it allows for very fine-tuned uh, sharing of data so that I don't have to have maybe 5 or 6 different role-based buckets of access to information that I share with different partners. But with blockchain, its use of public key technology, public-private key infrastructure technology allows me to give 1,000 different parties, whether they're companies or individual patients or providers or researchers, 1,000 different keys that give them 1,000 different specific points of access to information only on a need to know basis, what they need to know for their particular purpose. And that purpose may be time limited, or it may be limited to utilizing that data for specific activities. And so when you think of blockchain advantages, you've got this immutable record across the cloud where you can't change things, you can't cheat. And then you have really fine-tuned access based on keys that can be revoked, they can be timed out, etc. So that's blockchain. And then APIs, you're all familiar with, allow us to connect across different systems. So this illustrates the thesis, this slide of bringing together, different aspects of the industry that utilize today still very non-interoperable software systems. Now, from a practical perspective, what does this mean? Our connected health platform, as we call it, has 3 layers. So one, top layer, workflows, right? So this is could be a mass testing workflow where in the case of COVID, we worked with a lot of different customers across the country in having people register or just show up and then very seamlessly participate in some kind of mass testing process. Now that may involve staffing agencies, the organizations, whether they're companies, schools, universities, general public, labs that process tests, all of these providers that get results, or in a school context, student health center that gets results and is then empowered to kind of follow up with students and care for them, et cetera. So, this workflow cuts across different organizations, and a digital workflow helps make that process much more seamless, right, for patients and whatever staff are doing things. So it's easier, there's less to think about. It helps assure quality and provides massive efficiencies in terms of labor. The second layer is what we call our interoperability hub and tech-enabled services marketplace. This is all about connectivity to different parties. And that layer of the platform allows us to automate reporting into different government agencies, that certain diseases have to be reported depending on state or municipal regulations, et cetera. Allows us to automate data feeds in and out of lab information systems, EHRs, health information exchanges, clinical trial software systems, variety wearable software platforms, variety of different technologies that different parties in a collaborative workflow might be using. And then the tech-enabled services marketplace is how we plug in third-party services that we're already working with. And so if we have a customer organization that needs a particular telehealth solution in their workflow, well, we're working with these companies and we can easily just plug them in. You don't have to worry about going and finding your telehealth partner. If it's a staffing solution, and we're being used by a variety of healthcare staffing companies. All right, well, these three are working in your area. They could play the role that you're needing to. So the tech-enabled services marketplace allows us to help a customer plug in the gaps so that they can have a more comprehensive solution. And the third layer is where we leverage blockchain technology, and that's our data compliance engine. And that's what I talked about in terms of the immutable records, the advanced cryptography based access to information, permissions, and so forth. All of that makes it much easier for us as an organization, as a technology platform, to meet the highest cybersecurity standards. It provides data integrity for all data to meet the highest standards that the FDA requires for clinical trial data that is submitted to support some kind of new drug or new device application and approval. That's huge implications in the leveraging of real world data. And what do I mean by that? Real world data in healthcare is the term referred to data about essentially healthcare activities or biomarkers, what have you, that's not generated as part of a structured clinical trial or clinical research program. And because clinical trials, especially clinical trials that are aiming to generate data that will be submitted to the FDA, in order to be accepted by the FDA, the software platforms that are used for those trials have very stringent data integrity and auditability requirements. And traditionally, the rest of healthcare outside of clinical research hasn't had those. And so all the data on those systems don't meet that. Well, now we're approaching a decade into regulators, especially the FDA, being willing to have real world data and the analysis of that data, what we call real world evidence, be submitted as to justify a leaner clinical trial design. And then that trial can be done. We can experiment on less people. So treating people as guinea pigs, to a lesser amount. The trial can be done cheaper. It can be done faster. And we can know the safety and efficacy of a treatment much quicker. And the benefits to patients and to those companies can be achieved much faster. So all data on Remedy meets the data integrity standards that the FDA requires of a monitored clinical trial. And we're just beginning to unlock the potential of all of that real world data, having that highest level of clinical data integrity with a variety of partners. So we are a modular platform. And so it's another advantage of the blockchain automation of compliance. So the same platform is used in these two examples that I have here. We've got a large diagnostic lab network across the United States. This chart sort of illustrates several aspects of the platform that I mentioned. So in the case of the ArcPoint Labs working across the United States, they use digital workflows for both mass testing and point of care diagnostics for a variety of conditions. They work a lot with employers. They work a lot with providing diagnostic solutions and sort of satellite clinics and health systems and so forth. They have to integrate with labs that are processing those tests, and they have to report a lot of those diagnoses to state officials or state agencies, all automated, right? It takes a lot of the pain in the butt there. In their case, they also need medical review officers for certain tests to virtually review the test and provide an official diagnosis and so forth. Again, tech-enabled marketplace makes it simple for that to just be a plug-in. We've got a variety of providers that have provided that for them. from a security and data compliance perspective, they're meeting not just HIPAA, but they work in California, and California's got a unique privacy law that is a little bit like GDPR. And so that has huge, and we're seeing more and more states across the country adopt GDPR-like or California-inspired standards. And then the real world data value that I mentioned. A totally different kind of customer and use case, the Kirby Institute in Australia. And so they are using us with national hepatitis C elimination campaign that has an opt-in clinical trial. So this is exactly the kind of leveraging of our platform that I was talking about. Uh, it's regular healthcare activity, non-clinical research, and it's also clinical research. And so rather than juggle clinical trial software systems on the one hand and population health management and other tools on the other, Remedy makes it really simple. Here they're using point-of-care diagnostics, rapid tests, Cepheid PCR tests, integrating into REDCap for research purposes, but also an EHR variant for the campaign, feeding into government agency databases for reporting, and also public dashboards around the activities. We have diagnostic test device manufacturers that we've helped broker partnerships with as a result of this, and then all of the security and other sorry. Let me close this out. Security and other variants. Now, this illustrates the way that we use blockchain. And we have a very unique proprietary architecture. And so you'll see the visualization of a double helix. It's one way of thinking about how we do it. Essentially, we have one private blockchain network that has all identity information, in US HIPAA speak, PII, personally identifiable information. On the other network, we have all the activities, the health information, PHI, protected health information. They're never stored together. They're always separate. And for any digital transaction, a cryptographic key links the identity chain with the health information chain. And depending on the digital event, the subset of information, do I need your whole health record, or do I need just A1C result? Do I need all your identifiable information, or do I need just your name and contact information to send an automated email? Or is it de-identified data? And so therefore is a cryptographic unique identifier. Again, same architecture. We don't have to do anything to de-identify the data. It's the keys manage all that. And so depending on the purpose, you get what data is needed. And then the third cryptographic key links to a public, those were private blockchain networks, a public permissionless blockchain network that is auditable and puts a hash there. So we never put sensitive identity or health information on the public blockchain. We have a cryptographic hash that is matched to that particular digital event. So now we've got an immutable audit trail of that event. And in an audit, if that hash didn't match the underlying data, then you would know that things were fudged. But it allows us to leverage the advantages of blockchain at the same time to have the flexibility that GDPR and California privacy law requires for patients to be able to delete their information. And it's not just a regulatory decision for us. It's one where we believe as a company that patients ought to always be in control of their information, and our customers, it's their information. Remedy doesn't own anything on the platform data-wise, right? Our customers own the data, and our relationships with them enable us to provide value for them based on that. I mentioned the Kirby Institute campaign. In addition to the opt-in clinical trial component, one of the exciting things about that campaign is it has if because of the high co-infection rates between hepatitis C and HIV and Hep B, if you're positive for Hep C, then the campaign also does point of care rapid HIV and Hep B tests. And then if you're positive for any of those, you get plugged into the appropriate, follow-up and treatment workflows, et cetera. Hepatitis C is is dear to us as a target for various reasons. One, we started as a company in 2018 in partnership with the WHO and the government of Mongolia, doing a pilot helping the Mongolians scale their national hepatitis C campaign. And we that pilot involved, screening, rapid test, confirmatory PCR, getting generic versions of the hepatitis C uh, um, uh, uh, treatments, usually about 3 months of treatment, linking to outcomes on the AHR. And another reason is because that is a disease for which we've got the miracles to cure it and eliminate it. What's preventing that is the collaboration in healthcare ecosystems to go and cure whoever's got it, and then it doesn't spread. And sadly, in many countries, we actually have infection rates rising, even though we've had cures for almost a decade. Cepheid is a diagnostics company. I've mentioned them briefly. They work with us because we allow what they realized after having an online sort of cloud solution where results can be fetched by their customers. No one's really using it. And it's because for data to actually achieve value for organizations, it takes a lot more than just having the data. It's that data in combination with some kind of workflow, getting to the right people, um, uh, having the right analytics generate evidence and insights as a result of it, et cetera. So that we're really excited about that partnership, helping them transition from thinking of themselves as selling tests to really being an information service. And this is the last slide, and I'm happy to take some questions. Then we worked with the FDA on their Drug Supply Chain Security Act pilot program. We actually led a consortium that the organizations are listed here, and there we piloted use of a blockchain-enabled platform, Remedy platform, for meeting new drug supply chain tracking requirements. And that's sort of the supply chain QMS, quality management. But also, we worked with the health systems. We were focused on oncology centers. And we said, look, we're doing all this tracking. If we can also gather sort of the clinical real world evidence, bundle those together, then we have infrastructure, and the whole health system can have infrastructure that can be generating, truly valuable real world data, real world evidence at scale without a lot of extra infrastructure costs. If you're tracking stuff throughout health systems, particularly in this case, specialty medicine transfers, and you've got in other systems the clinical activity and outcomes data, just match the two with the appropriate consents of patients. So I want to thank everyone for their patience in this presentation. I'm happy to take any questions that folks might have.
Thank you, Jason. Yeah, so we are 5 before the hour. I'm sure Dr. Cross wouldn't mind staying on a few minutes more to answer
No, no,
questions,
no.
especially
Mhm.
since he thought this was going to start at 9 a.m.
Yeah, that's
So,
right. So I've got an extra hour if you guys do.
so if you have any questions, go ahead, raise your virtual hand, and I will call on you one by one. No?
Well, all right. Well, people think of questions. I've got one lesson learned, and
Mm-hmm.
this is from the that the title is like lessons learned in deploying blockchain in healthcare. One is I like to say first rule of selling blockchain in healthcare is don't talk about blockchain. Um, and we've seen, and we were part of the early generation of blockchain health companies that at first sort of led with that. Look, we're a blockchain health company. We're using this new technology to solve these problems in unique ways, in ways that I've described to you here. Uh, People still don't. A lot of people don't understand the technology. A lot of people don't. A lot of people associate it entirely with crypto, and all sorts of risks associated with that. What we found, our our success in deploying it, getting business and building a company has been, we really don't talk about it outside of special arenas like this. In our sales process, we don't get into it until um, the kind of security audits. But by then, we've already made the sale pretty much on the business case. So we lean in with like, hey, you've got these pain points. We've got a platform that does these things that you've been dreaming to have a vendor be able to deliver for you. Um, then you go through the regular kind of sales meetings, demos, etc. And then the key buyer leadership are like, all right, we want to do this. Um, we're going to bring in our IT team to understand your technology better. Blockchain comes up there, but it's coming up in the context of like, how are you meeting your healthcare security and privacy standards, et cetera? Do you have these, here, let me see your SOC 2, and you've got high trust and all these different certifications and standards, at which point their box is checked. And then the sale goes on. And so I think today it's still, if you want to, if you're trying to sell solutions leveraging this, I recommend not leading with blockchain. It just happens to be part of the technology platform with major advantages, but it's just part of the sauce in the back end. All right, happy to see some hands here.
Yeah. Okay. So I'm gonna call on Naveed. Naveed is our TA and Dr. Chelsome's PhD student in the UK. So go ahead,
One.
Naveed.
Thank you, Megan. Hi, Jason. That was really interesting. Thank you so much for telling us about it. I'm sorry if you mentioned it and I completely missed it, but from what I understand, a blockchain is usually a distributed ledger, right, which runs along multiple nodes.
Mhm.
So for crypto or something, you'd understand that all the participants who are sort of either mining or storing, any information about that, their machines could be used as the ledgers, the distributed nodes. But in
Mhm.
this case, how like what computers are being used as nodes, because or is it the patients themselves who contribute in this? So that I would just like some clarity on that.
That's a fantastic question. So we currently we designed the platform to run on to be blockchain protocol agnostic. And so different protocols, whether it's Bitcoin or Ethereum or Avalanche or Polygon or whatever, they have their different um uh
The
node
protocols, yeah.
node management, consensus mechanisms, etc. um
Yes.
and so we've run on, since we were created, we've I think we've run on about 8 different public protocols, but we've settled on Avalanche for a variety of reasons, and about a year ago, and it has massive scalability advantages. And so the Avalanche network is it's a kind of a hybrid sort of proof of stake and distributed compute network. And so we leverage a protocol, so we don't have to create our own network. And in one, part of your question, have patience, mining and validating transactions, et cetera, or even healthcare system partners, et cetera. We just leverage the Avalanche network. Now, we worked with them to have three. This is unique to their blockchain protocol. There are 3 Avalanche subnets allocated to Remedy, and we control those, but they run across all the Avalanche network validators. So we get the advantages of the distributed compute. We don't have to mobilize a full community to do that. And as I mentioned earlier when I was talking about the blockchain technology, how we use it, the Avalanche network is the public anyone with the appropriate technical skill can audit hashes on the Avalanche network. So it has that immutable audit trail sort of feature that is also radically transparent. You don't need to trust PwC or trust me. You can get your own people with the right skills to verify hashes, but we don't put sensitive information directly on that network. We have the sensitive information on private blockchain networks that we manage, and we use both Microsoft Azure and AWS services and node services in doing that.
Okay, thank you so much.
Great question.
Yeah, I think that's like a great question. Sort of, Jason, you were talking about why you don't lead with saying you're a blockchain company. I think I have a very US based perspective, but there was this period of time in like the late 2010s when blockchain was like really sexy, like when crypto was really sexy. And I think a lot of companies kind of took advantage of the hype and the fact that a lot of people didn't understand blockchain and kind of branded things blockchain that weren't. So there's a little bit of a consumer confidence perspective, right?
Mm-hmm.
Like where people feel like, oh, blockchain, I've been burned by that, right?
Yep.
And they like don't want to touch it. So yeah, that's like another interesting thing to overcome, right? Like in terms of thinking about like, if you're in the business of quality control and the fact that like you're in such a highly regulated sort of market, right? Like on the tech side, the stuff isn't regulated at all. People can call things whatever they want, right?
Or even not tech. What both kind of got me, but I also thought it was hilarious was I think it was 2018, before that bubble burst, um seeing a bunch of publicly traded but like small cap companies that have nothing to do with technology throw blockchain in their name, and then their stock would go up. One was like a pet store brand. Another was I think it was like milk or so. I don't know, like people, but like they're publicly traded. You threw blockchain into the name, you rebranded, and like the stock went up. It was kind of crazy. But yeah, no, and those are all things that make generalists, nervous at hearing the word at first. And so when it comes up in a very specific context around automating compliance across silos, and that allows us to deliver the superior business value to you at the application layer, then what they care about is the business value. Right? Like, oh, I could do more for patients, or I can reach more patients, or my costs can come down significantly, right? And I reduce my risks while I'm at it. Like, okay, you just happen to use this B word to do it.
Yeah. I'm going to call on Augustine next. Augustine is he's one of our he's the latest person to accept a seat in our fall 2024 cohort. So go ahead, Augustine.
Thank you, Dr. Megan, and thank you, Jason. I wanted to find out, so as part of the blockchain technology, what you do you provide is it like decision support? Is it like a decision support system? Or I'm asking that because like I know when it comes to decision support system, like there are issues about like trust and then
Mhm.
biases and all that. As part of your services, do you provide that or do you provide that support?
Yes. So the answer is yes. And that would be if the workflow on the workflow layer involves some clinical decision support functionality. Now, you're right. Depending on the kind of clinical decision support tool, um, especially if that tool is leveraging AI, there's a lot of well, one, there's a lot of reliability concerns generally, and then there's special regulatory considerations that apply to that. But it's funny how we have some customers right now that we're working with where uh, part of they're diagnostic companies, and two in particular. And as part of what they offers, like, oh, we get reimbursed by the insurance company for the test. We get paid for that. And then we provide our customers the result, but we also provide uh, some clinical treatment recommendations based on standard of care to the provider and the patient. And again, that kind of support, that kind of report is most valuable uh, in the U.S. In rural healthcare and in settings where you don't have as much of specialist expertise concentrated in a particular place. Um, but part of what I called their attention to is like, oh, well, here's, that's great, and that's great value for patients and providers. You're not getting paid for that, because insurance providers don't pay for just, a report on what this diagnostic info, the next step, what are some options for how to follow up on this, when it's just a PDF. But if you put that in a user interface, Claude, a clinical decision support tool, and it actually and can validate that it can improve the quality of care in particularly these rural health contexts, you can get reimbursed by insurers also for that digital health tool. So it's a great question. So the answer is yes, but we don't brand ourselves as a clinical decision support tool only sort of focused company. Those are just the question is what's the workflow that you're trying to improve? And in that workflow for the target demographics, would a clinical decision support tool be advantageous? Um, are you already doing the analytics in the case of these reports that I just mentioned that provides the clinical decision support? In which case, let's make it more dynamic, digitally presented, um, or um, are you looking for a partner to provide that? And then we can plug in, as I'm sure you know, Augustine, there are hundreds, if not thousands, of clinical decision support tool focused companies in lots of different niches of healthcare. And a lot of them are beginning to leverage or have been leveraging AI for a while. And so depending on the condition, all right, you want to work with so and so, well, let's strike up a partnership with them. Let's plug them into the workflow here. And at the end of the day, one of the advantages of working with Remedy is it's a comprehensive solution, but that comprehensive solution can include other digital health companies slotting in and providing their unique value add. Great question.
Thank you.
Mhm.
All right. Next is Dr. Jim Couch, and I'm gonna give you the caveat, Jason, that Jim is both a medical doctor and a lawyer. So buckle up.
Awesome. Thanks. Well,
Yes.
lawyer to lawyer, I hope you actually appreciated my comment about getting the lawyers out of the way.
Yeah. Well, that's what Shakespeare said. First, we must kill all the lawyers. So I'm used to that. So, anyhow, Megan actually stole my question. About 6 years ago in 2018, you mentioned I actually did a lot of research in blockchain for Centene, one of our big health insurers over here. And then the interest in it sort of faded shortly after my report. And so I'm wondering, since we're clearly in a hype delusion type of cycle right now with AI, where do you put blockchain on that overhype and over delusion, and hopefully moving towards a steady state of realistic sustainability? And also, is to use a much overused term, is there a synergy at all between blockchain and AI going forward?
Two fantastic questions. So one is I love this phase in the blockchain health sort of ecosystem because we went through the initial sort of big hype, and then and you had a lot of pilots that were focused on, oh, how do we, here's this new toy, what can we do for healthcare with it, but it's just an enabling technology. And so the fact that we then had the sort of post hype sort of period, and we're still in that, means that you have companies like Remedy that have just been building and learning. I mean, it does no good for Remedy as a company or for patients that could benefit from this technology to just bemoan the fact that, like, oh, people still don't understand blockchain. Like, well, that doesn't help anyone. Instead, we've been learning and iterating how do we use it to create value in a scalable way, and how do we sell it well. And if we don't do that well, we'll go out of business, and that's a strong incentive to figure out how to sell it. When you can sell it, you're getting adoption. And as I mentioned, a lot that adoption is usually not, oh, I'm going to buy it because you're using blockchain. It's, I'm going to buy it because you're solving these problems in like significantly better ways, like 10x value. And I may or may not even be aware that you're using blockchain to do it. My chief information security officer will be aware when they do their security audit, but me as the lead executive involved in partnering with Remedy, I may not even be aware. Someone in my organization is, and I may or may not know. And we kind of feel out in the discussion early on, like, are they, we'll explain, we use the blockchain enabled architecture, blah, blah, blah. And, if they're interested in that, we go in that direction. But usually that's not what they're excited about. They just care about solving their problems. When it comes to blockchain and AI, that interface is actually incredibly important, I think, for the future of both. In the following way. So one of the big challenges in AI, especially for healthcare AI, is having quality data, and having compliant quality data. And if training an AI model or running queries with AI models on high quality, compliant data that you actually have permission to use, right? Permission from the companies that may have the variety of data rights over that, consents from patients, because what a company can authorize other companies to do with data is ultimately a function of what patients have consented to, and so forth. And so what I like to tell people is imagine and they're coming, but imagine the HIPAA version of all the open AI lawsuits for, oh, you trained on my data without my permission. Well, the HIPAA versions of that are going to be, worth 100 times as much liability, and so forth. And this is where blockchain comes in. At the three layers that I called out. One is data that is that is generated in the world of real world healthcare activity and has blockchain based immutable records and auditability, et cetera, right? That improves the quality of the data. We can know with those audit trails that data is what we've been, told. We can also, if blockchain is being used to automate compliance documentation around that data, we can also know that, oh, that data was, the signatures by the clinical research associates involved in that research study, et cetera, meet the FDA's e-signature standards, all that stuff, right? So it's like, we also know it's fully compliant. And third, having an immutable record where you can't cheat of permissions from the companies that are generating the data and passing it on to another company and to another company, and most importantly, the consents of the patients, allows for lawyers to give a green light. And so when you can have so that's one interface, is enabling safer, compliant, non-infringing, AI model training and queries. The other, Jim, is on the cryptography side of blockchain. So in blockchain, we have this, we use the term zero knowledge proof. It's used more in the blockchain engineering community. But what that means more generally is cryptographic proof of an underlying digital state without having a human have direct visibility into that underlying state. And thus the term zero knowledge. Like, I can have knowledge of something with, or I can have proof of something without having direct knowledge of it, right? Zero knowledge proof. Or cryptographic verification is frankly what I think a more useful term. Well, one of the big challenges, especially in healthcare with data silos, is getting enough data across these silos to effectively train models and to run queries. And so the concept of what's called federated learning, so machine learning in a federated way, is, all right, keep the data in the silos. We'll train the model across the silos. That's the federated aspect of it. Now, federated learning with zero knowledge cryptographic verification means I could train the model across the silos without needing to see directly what's in each silo. But I can have cryptographic verification that what the silo's owner / controller says is there is what's there. And from a risk and incentive perspective, the thesis, at least in healthcare, is that maybe data silo controllers or owners would be more willing to enable their data to be part of AI solutions if they didn't have the risk of third parties seeing their data, either because they're concerned about privacy liabilities or increasingly intellectual property, trade secret concerns, and so forth. So there's that. So one is the first answer to your question is we can make the current model safer. The second answer is there's a way that blockchain and blockchain cryptography can enable federated learning models that will make it safer in the future for model training across data silos and being able to trust those models were trained appropriately without any human seeing the underlying data.
It's great. I'm going to send you an article that came out in Journal of the American Medical Association, actually just 2-3 days ago. Healthcare AI and Patient Privacy, the Dinerstein versus Google lawsuit, which so far has not gone the plaintiff's way. It recently got dismissed at the federal appeals court level in the Seventh Circuit, but it got dismissed because of lack of standing, not on the substantive issue of whether or not Google, in fact, did violate the patient's privacy rights by using their data for medical artificial intelligence. So
I'd love that. Thank you so much. That'd be fantastic. I'd love to see that.
okay.
I'm going to maybe ask some questions
Please.
to help, the students sort of marinate and think of some more. But so Jason, continuing with this conversation about like AI versus blockchain, how are they similar? How are they different? I really see AI as like a transformative technology, right? Where it's able to do things that couldn't be done previously, right? And so far, like from your presentation, it seems like the Remedy platform, with its underlying blockchain architecture, like this is about efficiency and scale, right? So not necessarily doing something transformative, right? But just being able to do things faster, better, cheaper, at scale, etc. I was wondering, do you see transformative potential, right, for this technology? And
yes,
one way my idea, and you can tell me if I'm wrong or not, is thinking about how just this very question of what you were talking about with these AI models, that you have the patient data, right? Oftentimes you have the doctor's annotation and diagnosis, right? You have the hospital that's storing the slides, paying for all the preparation and things like that, right? You have all of these stakeholders, right? That get erased when the data is anonymized, right? And we're just dealing with a picture of a histology slide. And so it seems like it's possible, right, that this kind of approach could invite patients to be shareholders in drug development um, in a much more sort of concrete way. And I think this could have like huge implications, right, for how we as a society relate to innovation in the life science and participate in the life sciences.
Okay. Two awesome questions. All right. So one is, and the first one, they're awesome in different ways. So the first one, I did have a prior life doing a PhD. I got the master's and I did my PhD exams, but I then pivoted in the history and philosophy of science. And then I did my PhD in anthropology. So I love the first question for its philosophical and social dimensions. Transformative versus, let's say, efficiency enhancing, enabling technologies. So one, it's funny because on the AI front, particularly machine learning, about 10 years ago, it was like 12 years ago, like early machine learning um, uh, era, I had, a good friend who's a professor, statistician, researcher. Just be like, this is just statistics. People call it AI, they can get a bunch of VC money. And it's just recursive statistics. That we've been doing that forever. And she's right. Um, but it's about scale, right? So these AI models um are machine learning are a variety of different probabilistic statistical tools that we've had for at least since the 19th century, and some principles even longer. But recursively and digitized, and so they get the math gets super efficient, super scale. And at some point I think AI is transformative. At some point, it's a qualitative difference. It's not quantitative. It's not statistics faster. It's a new thing. And so I definitely think it's transformative technology, but I don't think it's but I think in the case of AI, it's efficiency and scale supercharged, and then you get this emergent phenomenon, which is it's so freaking fast we don't even understand how they came to its conclusions. But those conclusions are pretty reliable, and so therefore we'll use it for this purpose. Um, uh, and then, whereas I think in the case of and that's all internal to the math, right? In the computation of AI algorithms. Blockchain, this is interesting. I think blockchain, from the very beginning, the cryptography is one thing. Cryptography is like algorithms, but blockchain technology from its very beginning is a social technology. So even from the first blockchain protocol, the Bitcoin protocol, it requires a community to do the node work, the mining in the case of Bitcoin, for the technology, for the distributed, for the emergent properties to happen. And in the case of Bitcoin, like, well, why would people do that? Well, because when you mine and validate transactions on the protocol, then every so often a Bitcoin is generated and you get it, right? And then like, well, why do I want Bitcoin? Well, because maybe some people will imagine it has value and then act as if it has value, right? And just like we, and then eventually, you get but it's a social technology, and so it changes it's one that requires a certain kind of behavior, and then it impacts the behavior. So is quality management, like principles and processes, right? It's all like about no quality management process has 100% monitoring of every little thing, but via what is monitored, you try and catch stuff, you try and learn. The fact that there is monitoring affects people's behavior, how often, when they might try and cheat, all these things. So it's a kind of quality management processes or social technologies, social processes. And so I think I do tell people, uh, and this is a difference between AI and blockchain. Anything anything you do with blockchain, you can do without blockchain, more expensively and significantly more pain in the butt. And what do I mean by that? I mean, like, well, what I could have a PwC auditor stand over the shoulder of every person doing something in a workflow, and then have a EY, Ernst and Young auditor, behind the shoulder of the PwC auditor, because we don't fully trust PwC. Then, right? Like it, so like, and then you put enough layers of non-blockchain control in there, and you achieve it, but the cost makes it unscalable, right? And so I think you're right. So I think, but where question is if and when and how certain emergent new transformative capabilities emerge. And in the realm of blockchain, it's people tend to think about it in the realm uh, of smart contracts or commitments to do things that live in the cloud that are self-executing based on certain signals, and certain sources of information, etc. And I do think that's going. We're far from that happening at scale, but I think that radical decentralized Web3 world is just a matter of time. It's like machine learning in 2010 now, even before deep learning, right? Versus where we're at now. And I think there we will get emergent transformative capabilities, but I think they will be also social. They will be like, oh, this kind of interaction between organizations or individuals, which I'll get to with the patients and drug development, um, uh, or or other technology systems such as AI algorithms on their own, um, uh, is a qualitatively emergent new kind of thing. Um, Now, when it comes to the second question, um, it, blockchain enables the kind of tracking of contributions and the kind of cryptographic controls over access to information that uh, would enable more fine-grained patient control over who has access to my data and so forth. And therefore, entrepreneurship around, oh, well, maybe we can get, maybe patients uh, will consent and do extra data generating things if they get cut in. And this gets to the principle that I like to call fair trade open science. And it's the concept developed working with the African Academy of Sciences, actually, some years ago, where colleagues there kind of shared with me, like, look, Jason, you and your friends were part of the open science movement in the 2000s and 2010s, and you're really successful. So now most African science is dependent on uh, you know, donor funded research, whether it's like bilaterally, USAID or, Gates Foundation or whatever. And so our reports have to be Creative Commons licensed and open to everyone. Our data has to be in open data repositories. Our ENA patents have to go into patent pools, all this stuff. So it's great for open science. But what happens? Then American and European researchers, usually at universities like Fordham or Duke or wherever, then they'll build upon that and they'll create some IP and they'll spin out a company. And every now and then that'll become a multi-billion-dollar company. And then they'll reinvest in their ecosystems. And they'll be hiring mainly there, and they'll be investing mainly there, and they'll be giving donations to that university in the US. Um, and the Africans are stuck with their hands out, acquiring the next batch of grants and donor money that's going to say, all right, you got to do it all open for science, which is great for science. And this new kind of digital colonialism um, uh, sets in. And so the concept of fair trade open science, by analogy to the way that we use fair trade in commodity markets like coffee or clothing or whatever, to mean sort of a fair cut for everyone across who contributes value across the value chain. Applying that to data and to health data and health research would mean African research institutions getting cut in. It may mean African patients who are part of clinical trials and bearing the risk of of a drug that may not be fully safe as the phase 2 suggested, phase 1 and phase 2 suggested, or taking the risk of being in a placebo arm, or whatever. Like, I mean, they're doing work, they're doing risk, and at the end of the day, they're not getting anything. And so I like the concept of fair trade open science, because it kind of resets. It's like, all right, everyone who contributes from an ethical perspective ought to be part in some way of resulting value. Blockchain enables the tracking of value contributions so that you could have micro royalties coming back. And this is not just limited to like African contributions to science. We do have efforts now for rare disease patient communities trying to organize and pool data and try and figure out how to use blockchain to enable that data to contribute to research, but then have some downstream claim to royalties or whatever that might result from commercialization based on those contributions. In the blockchain crypto world today, the term DeSci, decentralized science, is the term for a lot of these innovative, more sort of crowdsourced scientific efforts, whether they're patient crowdsourcing of information and data, whether it's researchers crowdsourcing their research efforts, whether it's at an ecosystem play like investors in a research agenda pooling capital and then investing in researchers or patient communities to generate that data, and then sharing. The blockchain builds in the controls. We're like, okay, well, I got to get my cut, and I'm going to get my cut somehow through this decentralized platform. That raises a whole other set of ethical concerns, and it makes both the AI and the blockchain aspects of this new world of health informatics means a lot of work in governance, data governance. And we're in a new frontiers. There's a lot of fascinating experimenting in new governance structures for data rights in DeSci right now. And we have legacy bioethics sort of model, committee-based models for data in IRBs and et cetera, for data governance and sort of legacy healthcare large institutions. But I think the 21st century to do this stuff, to leverage these technologies ethically, requires a lot of work in data governance. Sorry, those are two deep questions, so I love them.
Yeah, no, it's great. So do we maybe have time for one more, or is everyone tired? So we have, Jason, we have a lot of like healthcare practitioners, I'll say, physicians, pharmacists, nurse practitioners, all over the world, in this program and on this call. It seems like I'm thinking about what you were saying about this being like really a social technology and about like kind of democratizing and decentralizing. And that's very much aligned with like what this program is trying to do, like really build a community of people. It's what, you know, why we're committed to like open source software use, etc. And I guess, but there is kind of a technological barrier to entry, right? And so, how do you include people in
Yep.
the social aspect of this, particularly with how your beginning remarks on how, like, for certainly for infectious disease response, like we have to be moving to some kind of global model, right? Because a virus doesn't understand a political boundary, right?
Yep.
Uh, so how do you how do you implement workflows where there are different technological ecosystems, right? Or
Yep.
perhaps even a mixed technological ecosystem, right? Which happens in the US, depending
Yep.
on where you are, as well as, you know, sort of the world generally.
Yeah, it's a very important question. I think an incredibly important question. I think I think it's in the realm of entrepreneurship and market shaping policy, um, because we need to make um, we need to make the everything we've been talking about today as simple as possible. And that might mean different things for different communities. There's technical aspects of that, but there's usability aspects. This is so I think we need UX, not UI, but UX, user experience, um, innovation focused on simplicity. And that's why I mentioned entrepreneurship, because there should be market incentives to uh, to drive uh, continue. It takes a lot of work to make things simple, for patients, providers in different contexts, and we've, you know, on our end, when we work in in you know, areas that may not have, you know, regular, you know, internet connectivity, or um I mean, frankly, like, for example, like, you know, diagnostic testing in public school kindergartens, right? Like, they're like, you know, our solution was like, right, well, one is like there's technical consenting aspects with like parents and students, but then students have these laminated QR codes. They don't have to have, 5-year-old doesn't have to have a smartphone to be part of a digitally integrated solution, etc. That same kind of solution we're actually gaming now with the test and treat campaign in Papua New Guinea. So, uh, but I think of sim, there has to be uh, continuous work on making, for inclusion, on making things as simple and locally appropriate as possible. I do think uh, I was co-authoring a paper for the World Health Organization bulletin with some colleagues um, from FIND, the Foundation for Innovation in Diagnostics, and some other diagnostic agencies, where we're arguing for a discourse or linguistic shift from interoperability to plug and play. And then because it means something different. So interoperability in healthcare has come to mean 6 to 18 month long processes of IT teams going back and forth and back and forth, and lawyers and this and that, etc. Whereas, our consumer experience of the term plug and play is, I could show up at in a new city, a hotel, and my smartphone can connect either via Bluetooth or plug into, a with the smart TV in the room, or the alarm clock thing that'll automatically be like a speaker for my Spotify account. Like we're used to, in our consumer experience, a plug and play experience, kind of interoperability between different technology platforms. And in healthcare, I feel like when we interoperability has come to mean something different than that. It's definitely not plug and play. And if procurement efforts, especially, this is why this article's being driven by some folks in Geneva, if large procurement agencies began to prioritize criteria around began to prioritize criteria around plug and play principles, then you would create market incentives that would reward companies with more bids and more business that moved in that direction, and those that didn't would would not. And these things take time. This is the realm of kind of technology policy and market shaping policy, but I think it's less. I don't think it gets regulated in by law. I think it has to be part of procurement purchasing frameworks, and then because that's about money. And then if money decisions are beginning to prioritize plug and play interoperability between technology platforms, then companies will compete to meet that. If not, companies like us that try and do that as much as we can, we got to compete with companies that are fine taking 18 months to integrate with something. And, it's tough. It's tough to put resources into getting really good at plug and play in healthcare when you can get outbid by someone who doesn't have to do that. So, great question.
All right. I saw your alert that you have a thing after this. So
I've got things all day, so that's fine. But this is such joy. I'm actually glad that we have this much time. So
yeah. And we'll have more because Jason's coming to Oxford. So hopefully, we'll see you guys there and we can get even deeper in this stuff. Thank you so much for coming. And thanks to everyone who showed up for this talk.
All right, really enjoyed it. Thanks, Megan. Thanks, everyone. Looking forward to seeing
you over
in Oxford there. All right, take care.
Bye.
Thank you. Have a good day, everyone.
Bye. Thank you.